The movie opens with a man frantically running through a dark and eerie forest in Ireland. He appears terrified and desperately seeks a way out. He encounters ominous signs along his path, marked with the phrase "point of no return," indicating either directions or distances to some unknown location. Despite his efforts, he fails to escape the encroaching darkness. As a flock of birds soars overhead, he stumbles and falls into a pit, only to be dragged away by an unseen force. In a different part of the country, we are introduced to an artist named Mina, who works at a pet store. Her life seems mundane until one day, when her boss tasks her with delivering a rare parrot to a zoo in a neighboring city. Mina agrees, taking the parrot home for the night. She confides in the bird, revealing that her mother passed away 15 years ago. Surprisingly, the parrot responds, almost as if understanding her. That evening, Mina, donning a wig, ventures to a bar where she introduces herself with a fictitious name, claiming to be a ballerina. The next morning, she apologizes to the parrot for her behavior, acknowledging that people might not accept her true self. With the parrot as her companion, Mina sets off on her journey. Along the way, she receives a call from her sister Lucy, who reminds her that she has family and nieces who love and miss her. Mina continues driving and eventually veers off onto a secluded road leading into an old, foreboding forest. Unfortunately, her car breaks down, and the connection with her sister is mysteriously lost. With the parrot's cage in hand, Mina steps out into the forest, hoping to find help. However, the dense trees offer no solace, and when she returns to her car, the road ahead is deserted. Faced with the deepening darkness, Mina continues to wander, talking to the parrot to keep her spirits up. She suggests naming the parrot Darwin, after the famous scientist. As she walks, the ground suddenly shakes, and she senses an eerie presence. Startled, Mina notices a woman running and decides to follow her. She catches up near a small cabin nestled in the forest. The woman named Malign frantically ushers Mina inside, warning her that she must enter quickly if she wants to survive. Malign, a resident of the cabin, has been living there with two other young people, Sierra and Daniel, for quite some time. Malign immediately instructs Mina to stand in front of a mirror, explaining that the Watchers observe from outside but cannot enter. As Mina stands before the mirror, she hears faint sounds like applause, and Malign confirms her suspicions the Watchers are applauding the arrival of a new object. As the night progresses, Mina announces her intention to leave, despite the others' warnings that it is impossible. She steps into the forest, and Malign joins her, explaining that the forest can induce hallucinations, but that survival is possible. They come across signs scattered throughout, marking the boundary from which a person could reach the cabin before nightfall. However, venturing beyond that point means there is no turning back. These signs were created by a man known as the Professor, whose whereabouts are now unknown. That night, Daniel puts on a show for the Watchers, presenting them with the newcomer Mina. Meanwhile, Sierra dances, as she does every evening, to entertain their uninvited guests. Mina explores the cabin and discovers discs containing recordings of Love Search TV shows. The next morning, she and Sierra venture out to gather medicinal herbs, as per the instructions of Sierra's missing husband, who asked her to take care of Daniel before he left in search of an escape route. Sierra explains that they have recently found strange burrows scattered throughout the forest, serving as daytime hiding places for the Watchers. She believes she has been in the cabin for almost 5 months, and Malign confirms that the forest causes a distortion of time. One day, Sierra disappears into the forest, and Mina follows her. Sierra confides that she feels a connection with her husband John and believes he is real. As they return to the cabin, they hear Daniel's screams. Malign and Mina refuse to let them inside, and the women hide under a tree. They witness lanky, spider-like monsters emerging from the forest, approaching the cabin window. The Watchers stare at Daniel, and the tension rises. Mina and Malign wait for the creatures to leave before rushing back to the safety of the cabin. Daniel, realizing the weight of his own actions, opens the door, understanding the consequences of his guilt. The 4 of them stand in front of the mirror, hoping to convince the Watchers that all is as it should be. Malign admits that she tried to protect them from certain truths. She reveals her past as a history and mythology teacher, choosing to come to this place voluntarily. She once hunted alone and saw herself at sunset, not an exact copy but similar enough to be disturbing. Malign explains that the Watchers are an ancient species with many names: changelings, winged ones, fairies who study humans to impersonate them. They will never let their captives leave. As the knocking and voices of the cabin's inhabitants echo outside, Daniel discovers a hidden hatch in the floor. Descending into the darkness, they find a well-fortified living space filled with food and equipment. Mina turns on an old computer and watches a video recording of a man named Rory K. Martin, the professor. He explains that he was the first to study the Watchers and tried to uncover their origins. In 1979, he found this place, which he called Wonderland. Every evening, the Watchers would come to his window and observe him. Initially ridiculed by his colleagues, he built the bunker with the help of lonely or troubled men from nearby remote villages, ensuring their disappearances went unnoticed. He would convince them to dine outdoors, hiding inside to watch the Watchers take them. The bunker was built on blood. The professor reveals that he once encountered a unique Watcher, a girl with red hair, who seemed curious and harmless. He realized that if he could unlock the secrets of the fairies, he might even conquer death. He lured her into a cage and began experiments, attempting to communicate. She changed form, sometimes turning into a frightening creature, but she seemed to listen. Over time, they formed a bond, but the professor realized he had achieved nothing significant. Despairing, he prepared to end his life and instructed any survivor to go to his university office and destroy all his documents. In the last recording, they see Hill Martin climbing up, gunshots ringing out, and then silence. Knowing it is their last night in the forest, Sierra plays music and invites Daniel to dance. He confides in her, sharing his dysfunctional family and his lack of a place to return to. Sierra offers him a temporary home, and they part as good friends. The next morning, the group sets out, guided by Mina's parrot, Darwin, toward their hoped-for escape. They follow signs left by the professor, eventually reaching a massive stone disc covering the entrance to a tunnel. Meline explains that this is where the last representatives of an ancient fairy race were locked away, once friends with humans but now filled with hatred. They must run far away, for the fairies are bound by magic. They walk all day, but as dusk falls, there is no river or boat in sight. As rain pours down, their hope falters until they notice flocks of birds flying in one direction. They follow, reaching the river, and the women rush to the boat. Daniel hears screams and sees John, or so he thinks. He runs back, only to meet his demise at the hands of a changeling. The women scream, begging Daniel to run, but it is too late. They sail down the river. Eventually reaching civilization. Mina goes to the university where Kilmar Martin worked, posing as his niece to gain access to his office and fulfill his last request. She finds documents, photos, and a recording where he discusses the fairies and the existence of half-blood children in the world. Mina discovers a stack of photos, and her expression reveals a startling revelation. In the evening, Mina visits Sierra's house, showing a photo of Meline, whom she believes to be the professor's wife. Mina explains that the Meline they knew from the cabin was a special fairy capable of moving during the day. She was the one captured by K. Martin, and she took on Mina's form to return to civilization. As they speak, a car pulls up, and the real Sierra emerges. Mina realizes she has been speaking to a fairy, who then transforms into Daniel. The fairy pleads their case, wanting to live like other species but forced into hiding due to human hatred. Transforming into Kilmar Martin, the fairy expresses a desire for understanding. Mina acknowledges the unfairness of humans banishing the fairies and admits that there may be others like her half-human, half-fairy. The fairy softens, spreading her wings, and flies away. Mina reunites with her twin sister, Lucy, finally forgiving herself for their mother's death. She shares her experiences and reveals that she still sees Meline, appearing in the form of other people. Mina's nieces show her a drawing of herself and Darwin, whom she keeps as a pet. Outside their apartment, a girl with red hair appears, watching them through the window, and the movie draws to a close, leaving viewers with a sense of intrigue and wonder.